There we
Nice.
go. So you've been riding?
We've been riding, man. It's icy out here.
Yeah, I
But
hear that.
yeah, we got a great storm at home in Tahoe, like really good December. I wasn't there for much of it. Um, I was in Colorado. I was in British Columbia for early December, and then I was in Colorado for Dew Tour, and then went out east. Went to Michigan to do an event that I do in Michigan, and then went out east to see my wife's family for Christmas, and kind of got stuck there due to COVID, and yeah, so I kind of missed the Tahoe boom that everybody
Yeah,
else who was at home enjoyed.
the start, like the epic start to the season, wasn't it? Like,
It was sick. I mean, 200 inches
yeah,
in the month of December is pretty phenomenal for Tahoe. So yeah,
yeah. So we gutted to miss that because obviously,
it's okay. It's okay. I'm the sacrificial lamb sometimes, and that's fine.
yeah. Well, sounds like good times recently. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's nice and set up now. It's like good to go. We're ready to film now. Things are filled in. So anything that happens after this, it'll be nice and ready to go. I actually just got a cabin in Tahoe recently and got to go there for a couple days, which was really nice. And the touring right from the house is really good. There's no snowmobiling allowed, but
yeah.
the touring was phenomenal. So that was awesome. I got like 2 days at the cabin, which was sweet.
So where's that in Tahoe then?
So it's kind of in a classic zone. It's in a zone called ASI, or that people call ASI, but it's like Donner Pass area.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's beautiful, and we got lots of good like I-80 Cliff, like a ton of old like Noah Selaznick and Damian
Y-
Sanders, and like the Tom Burt spines that are in Donner are not that far from us. Yeah, we're walking distance to a ton of classic old like standard films terrain. Mostly because the road's there and it's easy to walk in, and snowmobiles didn't used to be that good. So those guys used to be on foot a lot more
yeah.
than we are now. But yeah, it's awesome, man. It's like the only house on Donner Pass. Really, it's pretty sweet.
Wow, sounds
Yeah,
sounds pretty dreamy. Because
it's dreamy
I
for
went up
sure.
to Mikey Basich's place, which is kind of
Yeah,
round.
so
It's kind of round that area, right?
yeah, he's on the other side of I-80, so he'd be north of I-80,
Yeah,
and I'm south of it. I'm a little closer to town. His is like you kind of got a snowmobile into his place.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
As I remember, it's like 20 minutes on the sled maybe to get up there.
yeah, a little. It's not crazy far. It's a couple miles in
Yeah,
on a snowmobile, and my place is right off the road. Even though it's like in this stretch of land that is more or less no homes, and it is off the grid. The cabin is off the grid, and but his is a much more uh, involved entry, and he's as you know, you've been there. He's kind of like one of my idols when it comes to owning land and what you can do with it. I mean, the guy has a
yeah,
chairlift on his property. It's pretty incredible.
yeah. It's wild. I couldn't believe it when he showed me that. I mean, obviously I've seen sort of pictures of it and that, but I was a bit like, fucking hell! Like,
Yeah,
you're not you're
he's
not
one of a
messing around
kind,
here, are you?
and he
Yeah,
can build. He's just such a different human than a lot of us. He's just got the talents of and the creative mindset of what he can do with those skills of like building and welding. And I mean, the guy lost two homes in the last couple of years and pretty
yeah.
much
It's harsh,
rebuilt
man.
them. So he's a force, man. He's awesome. Love
So is
Mike.
it obviously is like like we all are snowboard geek. Have you got a tick list of the classics then?
A tick list.
Yeah, right near the new place you mentioned, like, the
Oh,
Tom Burt
definitely. Yeah,
line. Yeah.
there's so we just got it this summer, so I haven't really I've ridden around there a bunch and ridden a bunch of the stuff. But I'm really just getting used to being able to like park there because usually you got to go park up at the top of the pass. And so it's, yeah, just finding our routes and stuff. It's cool. But yeah, there's tons to ride. And I haven't really, like I said, I was gone for all of December and we didn't have really any snow till the beginning of December. We
Yeah.
had one storm in October, like kind of this freak storm that was pretty crazy. Um, and I was home for that. But yeah, man, it's on now, and yeah, we got to start, yeah, checking the boxes of runs and just finding new stuff too. I mean, there's so many little nuggets in there. It's really benchy, like couple
Yeah.
100 feet to like a flat, and then a couple 100 feet. So like, um, there's lots of stuff to find in there, and we spend a lot of time in there. It's usually our go-to zone if it's like maybe it snowed a lot and we shouldn't really be out in the backcountry flirting with big faces. It's kind of a good place to go the day after a storm, let the snow settle a little bit and go see what's going on up in Donner and kind of ride some smaller faces and stuff like that. Pretty fun.
So you're on your honeymoon now. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Man, well,
Yeah.
firstly, thanks for, you know, eating into some honeymoon time
No,
to
that's
do
all good. My
this.
lady's getting a massage. We shredded all day. We're happy, man. It's been super fun. We never get time just by ourselves. We seem to always be with our friends and stuff, which is great. Having friends is the biggest blessing in my life. But it's nice to just have some time to us and to go snowboarding, just us. Like we never get snowboarding to ourselves, so it's nice to just go out on the mountain and go to a mountain that I've never been to. I've never been to St. Moritz, so
How is it?
and
How
yeah,
you finding
it's
it?
great. It's icy. I think it rained here not that long ago. Sounds
We've
like it's
not
been pretty
we've not
warm.
had we've not had a great start in Europe.
Yeah, it's a little rough, but we got like half a foot yesterday, so with a lot of wind. Um, so it deposited it in some of the valleys and little nooks and crannies out here. So it's actually been really fun. We've been enjoying
Yeah.
ourselves despite the icy conditions.
Yeah, yeah. And how long are you in Europe for?
That's to be determined. I'm here until at least until the 13th. We're gonna do this. We're gonna go to Zermatt tomorrow. We're taking the Glacier Express over to
Ah,
Zermatt.
sick.
Yeah, we're stoked for that. And I've spent quite a bit of time on the trains here, um, getting around Europe. But my lady has never really done that. So
Oh man, it's so fun. Switzerland, it's so set up, isn't it? I really love that trip. A trip that we do quite frequently from the UK is like fly to Geneva, get the train around the lake,
oh yeah,
get around to Verbier and then sort of start from there, It's so fun, isn't it? It's such a great way to sort of see the
yeah,
mountains.
you guys are so used to it too, and for us on the East Coast, we have some train travel that's pretty good. Amtrak, it's slow, but it's beautiful. You got internet on the train. You can kind of, if you're someone who's in Vermont, you can kind of get some work done on the train going to New York or vice versa. So, but
Yeah,
that's really it. We don't really have, if you take Amtrak across the country, it'll take you days,
yeah,
maybe a week to get across the country. If you take from Truckee, you can take the train to Salt Lake City or even to Colorado, but
right.
it's an eight-hour drive from Truckee to Salt Lake City. But on the train, it takes like 16 or 17 hours.
Ah, right. Yeah.
So
So
it's just not efficient. And so to come to Europe and enjoy the train life, where you can be on the train for 3 to 4 hours, and it a drive here for 3 or 4 hours, it'll take it out of you. But getting on the train, you get a 6 pack of beer or whatever and just kick it and enjoy the train travel. It's cool for us, man. We
yeah,
don't
I
we
I
don't
like
get
it.
that. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. And so yeah, we'll go to Zermatt after this, and then I'm going to Zurich for the Dear Rider premiere, the
yeah,
Jake
yeah, yeah,
documentary. Gonna go meet up with some of the Europe Burton family, go see Hazy, and
yeah.
um,
Sick.
and then I'm gonna try to link up with Giggy and do some filming for a couple weeks with Giggy. We're gonna do a little road trip, and it's been a really long time since I've gotten to spend time with Giggy and film and enjoy uh, his atmosphere. I grew up just loving everything about that dude, and he is an inspiration to me. And when I was younger, he was such a rad human to me. All the Unink guys were so awesome to me growing up, that I'm really really fortunate to have spent time with those guys. But it's been forever, so I'm really excited to link up with Giggy and get some filming in.
And are you gonna head to his zone, like, kinda, his backyard? Because obviously he's got it on lock,
No,
hasn't he?
probably not, just because it's so low and the snow has been so poor. So we're hoping things kind of turn around here, but and if it doesn't, maybe it's smarter for me to just go home and start filming there, or at least get
Yeah.
riding in. But yeah, I'll definitely be leaving here by like January 20th or so, because I'm gonna go do natural selection in Jackson Hole, and then
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
yeah, just like with COVID, we got COVID over Christmas, and we had to travel. We had to drive from Michigan to Vermont because we couldn't fly, and like, it was just like kind of a shit show. And I've not gotten them the stuff they need to announce. So I'm sure T-Bird's frustrated with me, but it's just been hectic. And he was like,
Sounds
"Just order this thing off Amazon, and we need the photo in like 2 days." And now it's been like 10 days probably since I got that email, and yeah, I owe him a photo. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. Should be fun. I've been competing my whole life in that thing. Um, Trav's really created something, that we just, the Freeride World Tour has existed for quite some time now, but Trav's contest is just on a whole nother level, of Freeride World Tour. I'd say Alaska is maybe the most like a Freeride World Tour stop, where you're showing up to a face and riding an actual face, but pre-building kickers out of like wood and trees and all that stuff. I mean, that's really unique to what he's created in snowboarding, and I'm really excited to get into that kind of contest atmosphere. I mean, half pipe and slope style courses are what I've done for the last 18 years, 20 years of my life. Um, and free riding contests is something that's completely new to me. Free riding is somewhat new to me. I'm still really learning and becoming a professional in that world. I wouldn't even say, um, that I'm at the level that some of these guys are, but I'm excited to have a crack at it.
Yeah, it looks like from the outside that you've been starting the transition maybe, in the last
Yeah, and I
couple of
mean,
years.
since I was 18, I went to like Alaska with the Unink guys and filmed for Absinthe when I was like 18, and I'm 33 now. So I've always been able to dabble in it. Burton always, gave us the opportunity. It was, so many people are like, "Oh, I'm sure Burton like keeps you in the contest scene. They really force you to do contests." Like, not at all. I mean, that's always been solely up to me. And if anything, Burton's given me the opportunity to go do that stuff throughout my career. Sent me on trips to Alaska and get me hellying in New Zealand. And Jake, even after the Olympic stuff, he would take us on a heli trip, to just go ride big long heli runs with him and Donna. And you know,
Rad.
um, I've
Sounds
really
so fun.
oh he's the man, dude. Like that was, and Nick Russell being my roommate for the last like 6 years of my life has really gotten me into just how to free ride and moving safely through the mountains, and really just like really learning about how to make a good turn. I remember one time I went riding with Blotto and Nick, and Blotto was just like, "Man, I got so many photos of Nick." And I'm like, "Oh, sick. Did we get some photos?" And Blotto's like, "No, dude, you need to learn how to like make a nice turn and a photogenic turn, you know?" And Nick's been doing it since we graduated high school. He's been free riding for since then, and I've been in the slope style and half pipe world, and so it's been really fun. And Nick's been a big part of pushing me into that kind of snowboarding, and Terrier, and a lot of the people that I get to spend time with. Mickle, is always like, he bailed out of the competition world some time ago, and has been a big kind of inspiration for me to get into the backcountry. So it's been a long sort of slow break into it. But it's just people. I was just talking to a guy downstairs. He's like, "Oh, you're going to the Olympics this year?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "What?" And it's just not where my head's at. I love half pipe riding. I think I will ride transition and hit jumps, park kickers, like as long as I can. I really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun. Makes me feel like I'm like a really good skateboarder or something for a second. But it's just where my head's at. I just want to spend more time in the mountains, not around people, not on hard pack. I think my body is screaming for it a little bit. The
Yeah.
half pipe's pretty tough on your body, and
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that actually, because obviously, like you say, you've been at basically leading it in that arena now for like 20 years, really. Coming up to 20 years. And obviously in that time of you've had some pretty serious injuries and pretty, some really lengthy periods of rehab and some real challenges to sort of keep your body in shape really. Like so
sure.
how's that been? Like, are you kind of feeling like you've reached the limit of that now? Because that must be draining to sort of
I don't
obviously
know.
the
I mean,
riding's one thing, isn't it? But like to keep coming back from those kind of setbacks. Like, how do you find that?
yeah, I think that I think the hardest part is really the just keeping up with the tricks and learning those tricks. I mean, the airbag has become such a standard thing in competitive slope style and half pipe, and I really give credit to the people who don't really want to use it, and we were some of the kids who started that. I mean, I remember riding with Kevin Pierce back in 2009, um, and really diving into the airbags pretty hard, and learning double corks and things like that. Sean had his foam pit, and but to stay on the grind of learning those tricks, you almost need that stuff sometimes, and that's why it's really rad that Mark McMorris, Brock Crouch, that these kids just don't want to use the airbag for multiple reasons. One being that it's just it's a little bit kooky to be jumping into an airbag time after time after time after time and then taking it to a jump, and that is the safe maybe way to do it, in a sense. But that's new in snowboarding, to be able to chuck these 3 flips, 4 flips, land on your head time and time again. But the airbags are also painful. I stopped hitting them because you're just landing on this flat airbag, and it ended up really hurting my back a lot. I would
Right.
get done at the end of the day, and it would feel like I took a ton of slams, even though I was jumping into an airbag. But the battle of just keeping up with the tricks is really the hardest part. I went to Sauce Fe this year, and I was like, I'm just gonna brush up on some tricks, ride some half pipe, and maybe I'll learn some new ones, maybe not, I don't know. And I got there, and I was just blown away at how quickly that was moving. Even though it happens every year, the Olympics come around, we get this huge jump in, we get this big increase in what kind of tricks are possible and what you're going to see in the contest this year. And so, seeing the triples in the half pipe by multiple people, and Scotty James has been pushing it for a while in the half pipe, and he's kind of been a rad sort of uh you know challenge for me. He's kind of pushing it in this level of bigger spins, more flips, more spins, and I've sort of tried to figure out ways to work my way into what I'll call the more core tricks, or the cooler tricks that are hard, but not as hard as a switchback double 12 or something like that. But
Yeah,
that
but
was really,
you've kind of planted the flag, haven't you, for like you say, the creative side of snowboarding. Like again, I was going to ask you about this because you've always had this. Because what we're talking about here, aren't we, is like the kind of classic argument about progression in snowboarding right now, particularly in like half pipe. The gymnast sort of approach versus
yeah,
the core approach, as you called it. And you've always like had that, like you've always flown the flag for creativity and for like having an approach to riding which wasn't about like, okay, well, this is the trick of the day, I need to do that, I need to tick that box. Like obviously you've always progressed, but you know what I mean, you've always had that approach. So it's interesting to hear that that sounds like that was quite conscious for you, like
It
about like,
it wasn't at the time. It was like what I thought was cool and what I wanted to do. And if I'm being completely honest, like doing those double corks and 1260s and things like that in the half pipe, it's scary,
yeah, no
it
shit.
it would frighten me a
It-
little bit, and so I was kind of pushing down a different path for multiple reasons. One being, I just I didn't love doing those tricks. I couldn't do them with a lot of style. I found myself doing them like everyone else, and I
yeah,
found my runs starting to look like everyone else's. And so at first it was like, okay, I want to throw like a switch backside air in my run because nobody at the time was doing that. I mean, Ross Powers, Elijah Teeter, there's all kinds of people who have done this over our sport, and I get a lot of credit for being someone who's done it, but people, this isn't new, I was
yeah,
just doing it with double corks. So I think it was like sort of a nice way for the judges to be able to give me some good results because I had the bigger tricks in my run, but I also had some slower spinning tricks that allow you to do them with style. You watch a lot of these tricks now in a half pipe event, and a lot of the time people are getting rewarded and they're grabbing their boot. And it's
yeah.
like the judges don't even see it. It's a frontside double 12. Who cares if they grabbed their boot? They just did a frontside double 12 and it was clean. What did they grab? Oh, I think it was Indy. And you're like, no, dude, they grabbed their boot. And it doesn't matter. They're getting great scores. And that is the problem that I hit, was just that I was trying to do these tricks and I'm watching them on film and I'm trying to learn them and I'm watching and I'm like, this looks so, I do not look good. This doesn't look
Yeah,
good to me. And some of the kids do it with good style. I think Ayumu does a good job of like looking pretty tucked and controlled and not too weird in the air. And then there's plenty of riders who don't. And they're getting good scores for it. And to me, I would just rather continue down my path of snowboarding to do tricks the way that I like to do them and do tricks that I think look good. And that was really a big part of pushing towards that style of half pipe riding. And my body, it was like, okay, do I want to like try to win X Games or Olympics or whatever this year and potentially put my body on the line so that I can't snowboard for another year, or even beat my body up enough so that I'm lessening my time on earth to snowboard? Um, or can I make this last longer and keep riding half pipe the way I'd like to, and keep my body healthy, and I get to skate, I get to surf, and I get to do my job the way I want to do it. I get to free ride and I get to do a few contests and I get to enjoy it, and I get a pat on the back for it sometimes, and that's nice too. But really, I hate getting injured. I spent years, like you were saying, of knees and ankles and my back and my pelvis and arms and fingers, and I ripped my finger out of the socket one year, and that took like, because tendons take so long, that took like 14 weeks to heal. I was like,
yeah,
I had a cast on my thumb. I had this big like paddle for so long, and I couldn't grab with this hand for like 12 weeks. And
yeah,
I hate being injured. And so I got to a point when I was younger, I used to just throw tricks just willy-nilly, just like, and I was loose. I was a loose cannon, and I think I did a lot of tricks that were progressive, but I put my body on the line, and sometimes I didn't do them with that much style, but I got them done. And that was a young Danny trying to make a mark in snowboarding, and eventually I got to a point where I wanted to do things the way I wanted to do them. I wanted them to look good, and I wanted to like make it last. I didn't want to just like win the thing in front of me that weekend. I was thinking about Alaska in March or April. I was thinking about going to New Zealand in the summer or South America. And, I think I was starting to look at it from a little bit pulled back lens, as opposed to like, okay, this week is whatever it was, do tour X Games, and I got to win this thing, so I need to learn the frontside double 12 or whatever it is, and so it was multi-purposed, um, and but not always the smartest. I definitely got a lot of fifths and sixths and tenths, and I'm not someone who won a lot of contests in my career. I'm not the most winningest snowboarder, but that's okay. I was reading a Ben Ferg interview, and he was saying the same thing. He's like, like first place kind of sucks sometimes. You got to hang out and do an interview at the bottom forever, and all you want to do is go have a beer with your buddies. And second place, third place is a really nice place to be. You're kind of like still get some cheese in your pocket, and you rode well. You probably put down a great run, and you get to go enjoy the night.
But also, you're talking about doing it with integrity, aren't you? You're talking about being true to like what your idea of good snowboarding is and what you're going to enjoy, because that which has got to be part of the reason why you've been able to keep doing it for so long, right? Because you've found a way of, like you say, balancing the progression with what you consider to be the important aspects of snowboarding. And as you've clearly demonstrated by what you've been saying, it's not just about progression, is it? It's about how you do it. It's about like what you're saying about snowboarding and what you're saying about the type of snowboarder you want to be. So and
Yeah,
I think that's why everybody really, you said you like, get praise for it, but I think that's why people are still stoked on it, though, isn't it? Because I think everyone recognizes that. I think everyone recognizes that that's what your approach is, and I mean, that is important, because if we don't, if people like you don't do that, then we do end up with figure skating,
yeah.
gymnastics,
And it's
you know.
heading that way, and that's always been sort of on our mind. Everyone's always, "Oh man, our trick's getting too is the sport getting too like figure skating or high diving or something like that?" And yeah, I mean, I think the aerialists, I think about aerial skiing. And I don't even know if you're allowed to do as many flips as we're doing in snowboarding now. I think the aerialists have like actually it's illegal to do more than a certain amount of flips in aerial skiing. And we may be surpassing aerial skiing here soon. And I too think it was who inspired me. Like I was very heavily influenced by Danny Cass. I was very heavily influenced by Scotty Lago, Trav, Terrier. And then, as I got older, I started to really get into like Noah Selaznick and Kevin Jones, and just like kind of the way that these guys ran their career was more about doing it to what they liked, and to what looked good
Yeah,
and what looked fun. Because at the end of the day, my job, unfortunately, whether I think that my job is to like be this amazing snowboarder, my job is to sell equipment and make people want to snowboard. That is the bare, if you break down my job, that is it. That's what I get paid to do.
yeah,
And so if I'm doing tricks that nobody gives a shit about, I'm not doing my job. If I'm not doing tricks that look good and kids see that and then are like, wow, I want to get rid of my skis and I want to snowboard because I want to do that because it looks cool. um, I think then I'm doing my job. And so the people who I looked up to were really good at doing their jobs. They made me want to either, Terrier made me want to free ride. Danny made me want to ride half pipe. Like Mason Aguirre made me want to ride half pipe and jump. And, he was like one of the most stylish dudes I could think of when I was young. And so that's where I think it falls for me, is just doing it the way that the people who inspired me and the people who I looked up to did it. But yeah, I
so it
mean, style is good. It's good to support style in snowboarding. Um, and it is getting tougher and tougher in the current competitive snowboard market. Um, but we need those other people too to make us stand out. If it works, it works in our favor. Thank God for the boot grabbers and the people who do stale fishes that aren't even stale fishes. They're just kind of grabbing in between their board. I mean, I heard this kid at this event I was doing in Michigan. and I give out gifts. I go dressed as Santa, and I give out like gloves and socks and goggles and whatever to kids who are, younger or older than me, but I make them do tricks to get a present. And, one kid said, I'm like, are you going to do a trick? What are you going to do? He said, yeah, I'm going to do it like middle grab. And I was like, whoa, it's not a middle grab, man. It's an indie, and it's not an indie if you don't poke your front leg and, crunch your back leg. And like, you can't just grab stink bug in the middle of your board and call that a middle grab. That's not a thing. But that is what, sometimes is happening out there right now is people are just grabbing their board wherever gets the trick done and not really focusing on that so much. And like I said, there is kids, thank goodness, who are, and there's girls too who focus on it and who don't focus on it. So we're very thankful the people who are, I went to Do Tour, and I'm watching Do Tour, and I'm watching these women and I'm watching these men, and I get stoked, and I don't know why, but just naturally as a snowboarder, I think what we get stoked on. But when I see someone grab proper indie and tweak it, or method and do it real proper and stick out that back leg, I get really stoked on that. And I end up, those are sometimes, these girls or guys are ending up in seventh, eighth place, but I'm like, that kid or that girl is sick, and it's not because they got first or second. It's because they are doing tricks properly, or the way that I like to see them done. And that's kind of like,
So who are you stoked on then? Quick geeky question on that one. Like who, when you
I
what
mean,
riders were you kind of frothing on?
well, I think, in the slope style world, there's a lot in the slope style world. I think slope style, just in general, the courses allow for much more creativity. Um, and it's tough. The triple corks and the quad corks are really making a lot of the tricks look the same, because these tricks are hard to get around on these size jumps often amount of times. The contests struggle with snow at this time of year, so the jumps end up being a lot smaller. And so, you see a lot of mute and a lot of indie, and a lot of these tricks look the same. So, you start to pick out these little nuances that people have. But like, Mark McMorris is one of my good friends, and I have a lot of respect for the way that he pushes his snowboarding. But you'll never see Mark like doing a trick and grabbing his thigh and balling up as tight as he can just to get a trick done. He's always got like an arm out, and kind of like not just, grabbing like to tuck and get it done. He's thinking about that indie poke and that style in the middle of his trick. I think Brock Crouch does a great job. I think Rene Renacongas does a great job. Torgeir, who doesn't compete as much anymore, is one of my favorite boarders. Um, Arthur Longo, not really a competitor, but amazing, amazing snowboarder. The way he rides is great. Blake Paul, amazing stuff.
We got a slight delay, haven't we? But I was just saying Blake's new section that he dropped is just so sick, isn't it?
It is, man.
It's kind of the thing I've seen recently that's got me the most stoked, really.
But yeah, I think in the slope style world, there's a lot more room for that, because you have more airtime, you have more to work with on the course to get a little more creative. You got multiple rail features to get a little more creative. Dusty Henriksen is really fun to watch. The kid looks like he's sleeping on his snowboard. Um, you know, uh, in the half pipe, I think, it's, if I'm being honest, it's a little bit more challenging. I think there's some really good riding going on, edge to edge, wall to wall. There's a lot of kids riding really well. I think Sean's always been an amazing rider in the half pipe. Like, his edging from lip to lip in the half pipe is phenomenal throughout the years. Like, something that I've always tried to be more like, and I think something that I really struggled with, and my height in my tricks struggled with it. Something that Scotty James really picked up on at a young age and mastered really well. I think Scotty's riding super well. I think he does some creative tricks and does some proper grabs. And there's times where I don't really like the grabs that he's doing within his tricks, but he is incredible snowboarder. Taylor Gold looks really good, really strong. Ayumu is incredible. Ayumu's little brother Kaishu is awesome. They're just like the raddest little force in half pipe riding. Um, on the women's side, I think Carral has really become a really good rider. Chloe, got to give her props. She is way above the field. She just has this innate ability to do tricks that a lot of these women can't do, and she does them properly oftentimes. I think there's a lot of women that are stepping up in the half pipe world, and I think women's half pipe riding needs it. But a lot of women need to step up to Chloe's level. Um, but there's a lot of good riding going on, and um, I don't think that it's as easy as I might think it is to do these tricks with proper grabs. I think that it is challenging, and I think that it's just something that these kids will end up focusing on once they get those tricks down a little better, and they can start to add a little more style into it. I myself have done that in the past, where you learn a trick and you're like, okay, that thing looks messy, I'm going to get it a lot better, but this contest I'm just going to do it with wherever I can grab. So there's a lot of good riding going on, and it's good to see, man. But half pipes are hard to come by, and I think that's the hardest part for half pipe riding right now is it's it's just like they're few and far between. I think in the USA, as far as 22-foot half pipes go, we might have two or three in all of the US. I don't know in Europe where they are. I know Laux has one. I think Les des Alpes does one in the spring, maybe. But these oftentimes are private pipes when they get built, and they're built for the national teams and the 1% of snowboarding. So half pipe snowboarding has a harder time surviving than slopestyle as far as like kids getting into it and kids being fully enthused about riding the half pipe. They're hard to find, and it's an expensive world to be hanging out in.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like kind of country clubbing snowboarding a
Yeah.
little bit, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Though, like, because you need that kind of that right place. I think this is why people are so stoked on people like Arthur and Blake, isn't it? Because it's those parts that those two have dropped this season, for example. It's resort riding at the end of the day, isn't it? It's like it's kind of
Yeah,
inbound side country.
absolutely.
It's like it's like you can relate to it, but that it's just like two of the best guys in the world doing it, with
Yeah.
with the style and creativity.
Yeah, and snowboarding is sort of a country club sport in some ways anyway. I mean, it is not a cheap unless you live in a mountain town and your mom and dad have a job within the mountain community. Um, it's a it's an expensive ordeal. I mean, coming from Michigan, I was lucky to have a hill nearby is 300 feet tall. But it's just like it's a bit of an expensive sport to begin with. Blake is like the prince of Jackson Hole. He grew up in a very uh, gifted scenario where he got to
Yeah,
ride Jackson Hole every day. Jackson is one of the most expensive places you could probably live for sure in our country, in America, and maybe in the world. Um, and that's its own thing, but like, yeah, at least you know riding terrain on your resort, those guys make it look really fun, really obtainable, and it is, as long as you've got the snow and winter's being good to you, you can go try and ride like Arthur and Blake and Trav and go, feel like you're in natural selection for a second, find your local cliff or whatever. And I think that's where splitboarding has become such a rad tool in the snowboarder's arsenal, which wasn't a thing for a long time. Ski touring has always been a thing forever, and snowboard touring really late 90s, maybe it was just kind of coming about. I think Craig Kelly and John Buffrey and Tom Burt and Jim Zellers, those are the kind of names that really got the um, snowboard touring kicked off. And that's a rad tool to have, from a cost perspective. It is expensive gear to own, but once you own it, walking into the mountains is as free as it gets. And sure, you're limited on runs, because you got to walk up the mountain, ride down, and walk back up, but keeps you in insane shape. And it oftentimes gets you into terrain where there's minimal tracks, so it allows you to find the terrain you're looking for too. When you go to a resort, you got what that resort has. That's the terrain you have to pick from. Wherever those chairlifts take you and you can get into the side country, that's your options. But when it comes to splitboarding, the options kind of become endless, and it really opens up your local range. I used to think that the Sierra Nevada, where we live in California, was small in some way. Like when I would think about it, it seemed small. And now when you get on a splitboard, it's so endless. It's just like you could spend a whole lifetime trying to cover the Sierra Nevada, and you probably couldn't do it.
I'd like to ask you a question about growing up snowboarding in Michigan, because
Yeah.
you kind of hit the you kind of alluded to it earlier. Because I guess the question I was going to ask is, like you say, if you, it's not the classic path, is it, for like American professional snowboarders to sort of, it's not on the main path, is it? It's not the beaten track, like to come from
No.
Michigan and kind of end up. And like you said, there's someone like Blake is a good example, like kind of almost like hot housed in a way, like brought up in this situation, got Iguchi, Travis, Carter, like all these role models to sort of learn from. But the path you took was obviously pretty different. I chatted to Sue a little bit before we chatted, because obviously she's someone you've got a really long relationship with, and she was saying that you kind of came, the way she put it, she said like you kind of came out of nowhere, like in terms of the consciousness of US snowboarding, turned up at the US Open, kind of survived on like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, like had to hustle basically to
Yeah.
kind of get the shot. Is that a kind of picture that you recognize? Is that how it was?
Yeah, in the beginning days, but I mean, my parents were we were rich in opportunity, in the sense that there was nothing that, if the opportunity was there, my parents were happy to help make it happen. And whether that was, digging deep into their pockets or not, that they were willing from an effort standpoint to make it happen. My mom would bail on work and come to nationals with me, or go to the Vans Triple Crown with me. I was very lucky that it wasn't like, nah. Even though like at times we couldn't maybe afford it, we still made it happen. And then and I would make it happen. I would mow the lawn and mow neighbors' lawns, and crochet beanies and sell them to the local snowboard shop to make money. And not that it would cover it or anything, but my parents, if the effort was there from me, then they were willing to dig into their own pockets and make it happen. But I do remember, yeah, some of the early contests, we were definitely on a budget. And snowboard school, we met all these kids who went to snowboard school, and my parents at first were like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but we can't pay 30 or $40,000 for you to go to school for the year, because, well, public school's free." But it was very out of our means. And then eventually, through like Ross Powers Foundation and through Stratton Mountain School giving me a scholarship, like I started to be able to do this stuff that the more affluent community could make possible for themselves. And so I was lucky. I had a lot of opportunity. It started with opportunity from my parents being willing to just drive up to northern Michigan and then out to the East Coast, and then eventually getting them to fly with me out to Colorado and California. And then I ended up going to snowboard school. But it was definitely, coming from Michigan. You're not born in Jackson Hole or Glacier, Washington, or where you're riding these incredible mountains, and you're just getting to spend a lot of time on your board riding great terrain. Or even Mammoth. Mammoth had amazing parks growing up, and a lot of my friends that I was growing up with, like Scotty Lago, Mason, Kevin Pierce, like these guys were living in Mammoth at like 14, 15 years old and getting to ride like the best terrain park in the world. And that seemed so like I was just dying to do that. Even when I had the opportunity to go to Stratton Mountain School, um, I was like looking at those guys. They were way ahead. Now that I had reached Stratton Mountain School, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm in the best place I can be at 15 years old. But then I went to school and realized, oh, the guys who are really doing it are living in Mammoth and riding, what park Danny Cass is riding every day. And so you know, if you let that affect you too much, though, I think you'll start to kind of manifest some bad thoughts, and you kind of just got to deal with what you have, and living in Michigan, I didn't really know any better. I didn't even know that free riding was a thing. I mean, we were riding tow ropes and had one rail in our park and a really shitty half pipe, and that was everything to me. I didn't even know that free riding was a thing. I didn't know who Jamie Lynn was. I didn't know who Craig Kelly was. I didn't know who Terrier was at that time. um, I didn't even really know who that pro snowboarding was a thing. That it was just, that 300-foot slope was everything to me. Um, so, you kind of got to just be stoked with what you have and pour yourself into it. But I was lucky to have opportunity, and uh, that came from all aspects. Came from my parents. Came from people like Ross Powers. It came from companies like Burton and Mountain Dew, and I just got a lot of opportunity. Sue is a big part of that opportunity, introducing me to all sorts of people and telling them like, this kid's amazing. You want this kid? He's awesome, or you want to have him in your life. And then my friends too, the opportunity to just have a ton of friends and get invited on trips because you're friends with people. That was a big part of it too. So, really taking, grabbing those opportunities and doing everything you can with them was probably the smartest thing I could do. Um, but I had opportunity, and not everybody has opportunity. I see a lot of the greatest snowboarders in the world who didn't have a ton of opportunity, and that's just part of it. That's just some of us are luckier than others, and I don't know why that is. I don't know why the world works that way, but it does.
Yeah, I guess that's what I meant when you said, like you say, if you grow up in Mammoth, you grow up in Whistler,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, Vale, it's a path,
Yeah,
isn't
you
it?
got a lot better chance, right? Your
It's a
opportunity.
path. If you're 10 and everyone's like, wow, this kid's ripping, you're gonna start thinking like, maybe this is a path for me. But for you, like you say, that wasn't even something that you were aware of. It's just something that you had to kind of fight a bit harder for. So with all that in mind, do you think that that different approach affected the way that you've kind of approached your career? Because again, like we said, a bit of a theme of what we're talking about is the way you've, I don't want to simplify it, but you have carved your own path through professional snowboarding. You've described it on a literal way with the way you approach riding contests. I'm sure we'll get to like your future plans. You've always had a bit of a take, like about how you want to do it. So do you think where you came from, the way you had to get there, influence that?
Definitely. Definitely. I don't want to say that like I appreciated it more than others, or kids who maybe had it a little easier don't appreciate it. It's not that, because I think that there's friends of mine who had every opportunity and they took a hold of it, and even um, growing up in places like Jackson, Mammoth, Whistler, you name it. Look at Mark McMorris. He's from the prairies of Canada.
Yeah, I mean,
But
he's another great example, isn't he? Of this thing that we're
yeah,
talking about.
and he took advantage of every opportunity. He had an opportunity to work with the Canada snowboard team and other people in Canada to like get him onto some bigger slopes and some bigger jumps. But talent, is something too that some people have and some people don't. And I've seen it the other way around, where people are born in the right place. They have everything in front of them, but they're missing that talent, and they really have to work hard at getting that talent. They almost have to work harder than some just to learn those tricks and stuff, because it's not innately in there. But I think I was lucky too, and maybe Mark is kind of similar in this stretch where he was like a wakeboarder, and I used to do like gymnastic classes when I was really young. My mom was like a jazz dance instructor and kind of comes from that gymnastics world. And just as a young kid, I would do gymnastics classes long before I snowboarded. Louis Vito, same thing, amazing gymnast. Anna Gasser, amazing gymnast.
Yeah.
So there is these little avenues that you're going down as a young kid that you didn't even know were setting you up to be a good snowboarder. And I was lucky to have the flipping in my blood a little bit, or something that I had in front of me. When it came time to do double corks and double flips, they came a lot easier to me than they did to Kev, because Kev just hadn't spent as much time on trampolines and flipping upside down multiple times. So and I remember going to like the gymnast place and getting in a belt system, and my mom pulling on the rope and me being able to do like double backflips safely on a trampoline when I was like 12, 10. And we weren't even that into snowboarding yet. It was just like what we did for fun
Yeah.
was go to the gymnast place. And so I was lucky in that sense too. So like being from a mountain town definitely gives you this little edge, but that it doesn't put the the crown on you right there. There's so much more that goes into it. But I think to answer your question, I appreciated it a lot. I grew up riding really icy man-made snow, very short slopes, no terrain, really minimal terrain. And when we got to go to places like Vermont or even California, I remember my first time going to Mammoth for USASA Nationals. We went and rode this half pipe at June Mountain. And a lot of people were complaining, like when we got there, that they had to go ride June Mountain, and that, Mammoth was getting the half pipe ready and there's contests in it all day. So it's nationals. It's age 5 years old to 60, 70 years old that they're doing contests for. So we went to June, and I was like, this is the most incredible half pipe I've ever ridden. It was just amazing. And a lot of people were complaining about the half pipe, but I didn't know any better. So I think innately, I just was a little more stoked on the conditions all the time and stuff because I was from Michigan and it was a little bit harder to ride there. And some people say like if you can ride the East Coast, you can ride anywhere. And I don't know that that's necessarily true, but riding ice all the time definitely prepares you for when you get to ride good snow. You really, really are stoked on it. And when you consistently get to ride good snow, you're extra stoked. And we get spoiled. I'm super spoiled. I'm here in St. Moritz, which is like so beautiful, massive mountain, so much terrain, and it's icy as hell. And I'm just like, my lady's like, should we go get a beer? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good on the snowboarding side of things. Like, and a little young Danny Davis would be like, hell no, like let's keep boarding. This is so sick, even though it's pure ice out there. Um, it's just perspective is everything a lot of the time in life. And when you can, I think one thing that can really help is even when you're having those thoughts of like, this sucks or this is whack, or, to just pull back and have some perspective that, just, I have a thing that's up at the cabin that came with it. And it says, if you're lucky enough to spend time in the mountains, you're lucky enough,
Yeah.
and that's very true. I think in so many ways, and you can dial that into like as far as you want. Look at what a lot of the world has. I mean, we are very much in this 1% of living conditions. Just being from the USA, so it's like perspective is everything.
I got to ask you, did you say your mum was a jazz dance instructor? She sounds fucking rad.
Once upon a time she was. Yeah, she did that for a while. For most of my life, my mom sold real estate, but when her and my dad were first together and when my brother was really young, and I think even when I was even really young, it was kind of a side hustle for her was teaching jazz dancing and gymnastics and stuff. But that was definitely a world that my mom was in college and stuff like that. And my dad was super into sports. My dad went to college on a wrestling scholarship.
Right.
He played football and all that stuff. So sports were everything in our household. And
Yeah.
my parents had their rule was like, you have to play a sport or have something every season. Maybe it wasn't a sport per se, but like, for my brother, music was huge. And so a lot of, I mean, he played a lot of sports too, but music played really heavily into what he did later in life. And that was kind of our parents' rule was like, okay, you don't have something this season, so why don't you join like the middle school band or whatever, and nothing's less cool than band in middle school, but we did it, and looking back, it was such a blessing, even though like you felt kind of kooky where a lot of your kids who were on the football team were like, you're in band class? And you're like, yeah, yeah, I am. But like now the guy who knows how to play the guitar or the piano at the party when you're 20
Yeah.
years old gets all the chicks. So it's like, um, but yeah, we played sports was our thing. That was baseball, football, soccer, golf. I was on the golf team because I didn't want to play football anymore once I got to high school. And my parents were like, that's cool. But what are you going to do in football season then? And I'm like, I'm going to skateboard. And they're like, nah, 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 nah. I'm like, yeah, you can skate, but like, what are you going to do? What practice are you going to every day? I think now the beauty of, a lot of people complain about how snowboarding's gotten so mainstream or skating has, but at least parents are seeing these as real avenues and real activities for kids to do after school every day and stuff, where even my parents were some of the more open-minded people when I felt like when it came to that. But even skateboarding wasn't like a legit sport to do after school. You
Yeah, no,
needed
it's a really, really good
structured.
point, that, isn't it? Because like
Yeah.
when you're a kid growing up, like, decade, 2 decades ago, whatever. Yeah, it's like, what skateboarding? Like, what the fuck's this? Like, we're not.
Totally.
Whereas like now, yeah, obviously it's like, oh yeah, skateboarding, that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that because that's a real thing. It's in the Olympics. We've seen it. Yeah, you're right. I mean, for all
Yeah.
the criticism, there are obviously
Yeah. And
for kids, it's a great thing, isn't it?
yeah, and it's a double-edged sword, like we yeah, there's good things that come from that, and there's bad things that come from it. But we think we just hope and we try to focus on the good outweighing the bad. And a lot of people too. I think now as I start to be more in the free ride community side of snowboarding, and competition boarding, kind of like I don't want to say it's kooky, but when you're a competition boarder, a lot of the free riding and a lot of those like guys in that world are sort of like, oh, you're still competing, and like you should get out of that crap and come into the backcountry. And it's like, hell yeah, I I love that. I mean, free riding is the shit. And I think that the competition kids are some of the hardest working kids in snowboarding. I mean, it is like a grind, a serious grind.
Well,
Showing up to the half
you
pipe.
gotta be right. You don't,
Yeah. You're
you're not
showing
gonna
up to
get
the
anywhere.
slopestyle course at 8 a.m. no matter if it's cloudy, flat light, sunny, snowing. You're going and you're hitting jumps and you're doing flips and you're doing 1080s. And it is a grind. It is those are some hardworking kids, and those are some hardworking people in snowboarding. And just as I think the competition world looks at free riding and is like, oh, how nice would that be just to like film all year? Like that seems so chill and easy. And you get into filming and you get into free riding and that side of snowboarding, and you learn real quick that this is not the easy side of no side is easy in professional snowboarding. It's all got its respectable grind. And I've been on both sides of it now, and I used to think that too, like, oh, I'd love to just be filming all year. That sounds so chill and so easy, and like ride powder all the time. But you're actually looking for powder all the time, looking for good snow. You're either walking to it or snowmobiling to it and getting your snowmobile stuck, or wasting your day walking up a mountain or whatever. So it's, I think, again, perspective, is just like everyone's kind of got something to say about uh, the side of snowboarding that they're not on. And, it's the same, I'm sure, for riding in the streets. I've never really gotten to like dive down that path, but those guys grind and they are up super late trying to hit spots that they're not supposed to be at. And they got to go at weird hours in the morning or night and go find these spots and hit these spots. And they get tickets and they get yelled at. They got people watching them all the time. And, so I think every side of snowboarding has its, deserves respect. And I think, you got to give it where it's due.
So earlier, it sounded a bit like, you're on the cusp of a change, maybe. You sort of you were almost like, I'm kind of at the point like where how long I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, but you were you were almost saying like, yeah, how long can I keep doing it? The progression, the beating up your body. So what is the plan? Because you've like you say,
Yeah.
you've diversified, you've been free riding, you've been up Denali, you've done some pretty, there's been some you've experienced in a lot of different sides, as you say, of snowboarding. Where do you see it going from this point?
Man, at the moment, it's like I think if I'm being honest, I'm most interested in free riding and filming and getting photos. And it's really the people I'm around. I think, um, my days spent with like Blotto out in the backcountry or Blatt. I've been spending a lot of time with Aaron Blatt. I just have so much fun that grind, that side of snowboarding where we're getting up at 4 a.m. and driving to the trailhead, whether it's splitting or we're sledding or whatever we're doing. And then we're going out and we're finding something cool that nobody's ridden that day, or maybe nobody's ever ridden. And we're finding a way to hit it that maybe nobody's really hit. And then coming up with a trick on it or coming up with a cool turn, or a lot of times it's like from the photography standpoint or the filming standpoint, it's like this shot that's like a little piece of art that you're making. And it's really fun. That's what I'm finding, a lot of joy in that right now. And that's kind of where my desire lays right now. And springtime is where, and summer and stuff like that is where the volcanoes and Denali and some of the like that stuff. I love camping. I love the suffer a little bit. I think Nick Russell really instilled that into me over the last few years of the suffering is kind of fun. And it's a very like Buddhist way of boarding where, enjoying the suffering and really being at peace with feeling like shit and being like like just so zapped on energy and so dead, and really just taking so much joy in that.
Well,
There's the time of
there's a
year.
lot of honesty in that, isn't there? It's a
Yeah.
real. It's like it feels like
Yeah.
it feels like you've stripped it right back to like the bare elements of like
Hell yeah.
you and the experience, and
Yeah.
that does feel. I mean,
Yeah.
it feels as good as it's a feeling as good as you can get in snowboarding, isn't it? It's a different feeling, obviously,
Yeah.
than a trick or like
Yeah.
a good day in a resort or whatever. But it's still like as legitimate, isn't it? And it's
Yeah,
really
and I
honest. I
think,
always think.
like, I think touring, snowboard touring is kind of rad because a lot of the time, or at least in my experience, like almost 50% of the time, there's no photographer, there's no filmer. It is like a pure enjoyment, um, and beta gathering really is what we're doing out there a lot. And but no cameras, no photography, and no way to really claim what you're doing or get kudos for what you did. You're really out there enjoying it, whether it's just walking in the mountains. I mean, I just said to my lady the other day, it was a couple days, it was New Year's Day, and, we had drinks the night before and we're all talking. I'm like, oh, I just love to just go walk around in the mountains tomorrow. Like, I don't even care how much snowboarding we do. I would love to just go walk around and just kind of like waste myself on energy. by just walking around in the mountains, and I enjoy that part so much. But as back to like where my head's at and where it's going, I'm just enjoying that grind of snowboarding. I mean, I'm so inspired by like, Mikey Rentz is someone I really look at as one of my favorite snowboarders of all time because he has, for one, the dude's been on Burton for like 23 years, 24 years, and he's not much older than me. Maybe couple years older than me. But this dude has been through all these cycles of snowboarding and it's never gotten old to him. He's just at it every day, loves it, whether it's pow surfing or snowmobiling or snowboarding an incredible face in great snow. I just I like love that side of snowboarding, like going and finding new lines, going to peaks that minimal people have ridden. Um, that's just cool to me right now. The half pipe, I'm trying to chase something that everybody else is probably doing better than me. Like, can I do back to back 14s better than Ayumu? Probably not. And I'm like chasing this thing, like this run, trying to put my run next to these guys that like are really maybe more hungry in that world than I am. So it's just less fun to me to be in the half pipe. And maybe I've done it too long, and it's starting to get a little stale in that sense. But I think it's just where my head's at is like wanting to freeride and wanting to learn a new side of snowboarding. Not that I've mastered the half pipe or I'm the best ever. I really do not feel that way at all. But I just haven't at all even began to master free riding, and that comes from the way I pick out lines. I'm still learning about that. The way I approach a mountain and how we get to the top, I'm still learning about that, how to like do it safely. Um, and two, I just feel like free riding is something I can do until the day I die. I look at guys like Terrier, like Jim Zellers or Tom Burt, guys I see in Truckee who like I mean, I just love like the way that they snowboard now. Like it is, they're going to be able to turn until the day they die, and that's where my head is really at. Is really kind of trying to become a good mountaineer in a way. And
Yeah.
that I don't think that means that necessarily walking up mountains and having an ice axe in my hand. I don't mean it mountaineer in that sense. I think Mikey is a mountaineer. He does a ton of snowmobile access, but the way that he's in the mountains, getting to the top of these things with a machine sometimes. Sometimes he's on foot hiking it in verts. But you know, I want to be the guy that where I'm at is I would love for people to be able to come to Tahoe and be like, hey, I want to go out and I want to ride some POW. Like, where should we go? And I can go show them an amazing day safely. And that's kind of where my head's at. I don't want to be a guide. Don't get me wrong. Like, I have zero desire in being a guide. I think that all the skills those guys have and the knowledge they have, I want that knowledge. I just don't want anybody. Um, I don't want some random client on my
Yeah.
conscience, and I don't want that kind of money making scenario on getting people. But I want my friends to be able to come to Tahoe and me take them out for an amazing day and show them an amazing time and make them want to snowboard more. And I want to keep riding stuff that I haven't ridden, and I want to be able to like learn new tricks in a sense that's maybe not the actual trick, but the feature I did it on, and um, the way we found that feature, and getting cool photos. And I want to inspire people to snowboard more, and that's really where I'm at. And I just feel like I can't really do that in the half pipe anymore. It's not. I can go enjoy the half pipe for myself. I can go do a frontside air or air to fakie and cab 10, whatever, and I really enjoy that. I had so much fun at Dew Tour just a couple weeks ago. Like I was almost talked into like jumping back on the Olympic grind because I enjoyed that so much, man. I was
Really?
like, it
That's
was really
funny.
fun having to put a run together and like showing up to an event and being like, okay, what's my run gonna be? Like, I haven't been working on this run for the last few months, like a lot of these kids. That was really fun. And like feeling stoked at the bottom, landing 2 runs, that there is a thrill in that still, for me. But I just don't feel that I'm really like doing my job in the half pipe anymore. I just feel like there's other people who are better at it than I am right now, and there always has been. But I just feel that I'm just not as into it as I once was. And ice, I just don't really love ice,
Yeah,
and
well, you've done your time on ice, haven't you?
but like I end up riding a ton of ice with Nick Russell. Let me tell you, like fucking
Yeah, I've
we
noticed that
go
about about
we go
about
climb
Nick's.
these mountains sometimes, and I'm just like, Nick's like, "Oh man, we should go ride that peak," and I'm like, "Dude, that shit looks wind hammered and just bulletproof. I didn't want nothing to do with that." And he's like, "Yeah, you're probably right, but it'd be sick to get to the top of that thing." And I'm always keen to go as long as the riding's good. Nick asked me like, "You got any desire to go to the Himalaya?" And I'm like, I do, in a sense, because I've never been there, and I would love to go visit Nepal or India, or like, I'd love to be in that, and I've never gotten to go meet those people and be inspired by that kind of way of living. But as far as the riding goes, no, I have no desire because everything I see from there just looks gnar.
I'm going to send you a link to this thing I found on YouTube the other day. It's fucking mad. It's called "The Man Who Skied Down Everest," and it's like from about 1970, and
Oh,
It's this Japanese guy basically who I think might be the first person to ski Everest,
sick.
and basically they do this. So it's because it's like 1970. They walk in from Kathmandu. So it's like a
Oh yeah.
300K walk in, and he he doesn't summit, but he gets to like sort of 26,000 feet, and then he basically, because he's a speed skier, really, and obviously 1970 it wasn't really like free riding, it's like,
Oh yeah.
so they attach a parachute to him, and basically he pretty much straight lines this thing. It is like
Please send me this. This sounds amazing.
sheet ice. Honestly, I was watching it and I was like, "How the fuck have I never heard of this
There's
guy?"
footage of it. How'd they film it? That's just
They
insane.
obviously took a proper crew up. It's like
Wow.
it's like a hour 20 film.
Sick.
I'll send you the link. But
That's a
and just while you mentioned Nick, like, how's that latest episode of the 50?
Oh,
When
yeah, man. That was a funny one. Like, my wife was at home when he came back and, or actually she was home before he went maybe, and I was there when he came back. I can't recall, but just a funny beat down again, like we talked about the suffering, loving the suffer, like, even though they didn't get to the top, I think that was a really great trip for Nick because when you don't get to the top of these things or you don't get to ride what you wanted to ride, it was always an excellent beta trip because a lot of the time
Yeah,
we're going for these peaks or these objectives that are pretty gnarly a lot of the time and stuff. Like we're going there not having spent a day ever in those mountains in our entire lives, or maybe we've spent a couple days, but we've never been in that zone or whatever. So it's like it's always a great beta mission. You just get you meet the pilot and you meet the guys from where you take the plane from, or you ride down to the ocean. And so if you go back, you're like, hey, we do not want to go this, like we don't want to go back down to the
yeah.
ocean. Like
Let's not
we
go
want
down
to
that
stay.
chute again.
It's like, so I think Nick was a little like was beaten down after that trip just because like he would have loved to get to the top, but at the same time he came back with a big smile on his face because they got so beat down and because like it was such a mission. And I feel like Nick, it's kind of like he's gotten a little bit of that Jones effect where I call it the Jones effect, where literally you go riding with Jer, and I feel like, and Jer would laugh at me and be like, hey, I've been on a lot of trips where we've gotten completely skunked, but every time I go out with Jer and I watch a lot of the trips he goes on, it seems like he nails it just so fucking well. And I that happens with Nick a lot of the time when I'm with him, like that Jones effect where we go and we're like, we just fuck that was insane. We just had 20 days on Denali with epic conditions, great snow, tons of sun, minimal weather. Like we went to Bolivia and we got hammered down in like a lightning storm, but like we got to ride some incredible shit that nobody's ever ridden. And I'm just sometimes I don't know how we get so lucky sometimes that yeah, it's interesting to see those projects that every now and then we get beat down and we don't get to make our objective. And I think those are important for people to see stuff like that episode of the 50 Project and what Cody's set out to do with that is really, really impressive.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a big,
it gets more impressive. Like the longer it
it-
goes on, it's like you see this the scale of it, the ambition of it. It's like, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
it,
one of the lines that he wanted to ski is gone now. The whole
right.
mountain fell off,
Oh, I
like
didn't
the
know
whole,
that.
yeah, I forget which one it is. I want to say it's in Canada somewhere. It might be in the Northwest, but yeah, like the whole mountain, just all this rock just broke off and the
Wow.
line is gone.
Right.
And so he won't be able to ever ride that one. And
It's
Zellers,
the 49.
yeah, yeah. And Zellers has a story like that in New Zealand where he rode something near Mount Cook in New Zealand. And, that thing, same thing, like this huge serac or glacier or whatever just fell off the mountain. And that line will never be ridden again. And that's kind of the beauty and sort of always something to remember with snowboarding and skiing is that like, you know, this stuff's always changing and to have a desire and kill yourself over like riding this one thing, like, this stuff's ever changing and it's about enjoying like this stuff you can ride and the stuff that is obtainable that allows you to go home to your family or your friends and enjoy another day out in the backcountry. I think Jeremy, when I'm out there in the mountains walking around with him, um, he speaks so highly of all these guys that are really seasoned mountaineers that are 50, 60 years old. And, he's always like, what an incredible feat to spend that much time in the mountains and continue to be able to do it. And I think that I never thought about snowboarding that way until maybe the last few years, where it's like spending time safely in the mountains and doing rad shit is probably the biggest accomplishment that you could ask for in our world because we get away with so much. And the more I learn about avalanche safety and I go to these courses and we get these case studies of like stuff like the Craig Kelly incident. I was just at a Abbey course in Baldface where we got the Craig Kelly case study and I'm hearing all these other case studies from all these other riders at the avalanche course and I'm just like looking at these stories and I'm like, man, we have gotten so lucky out in the mountains and gotten away with murder sometimes and that's incredible and you got to just be happy with that sometimes and be happy with the times when you're halfway up something and you're like, this doesn't feel right, I don't like this, I don't like that, let's turn around. That's when you have your big kid pants on and you're being pretty adult and smart about your mountaineering experience. You got to give yourself a pat on the back on those days because um, you're living to ride another day and you're gonna make more turns and get to enjoy great snow. So I think that's always like something that doesn't get enough credit in snowboarding and skiing is those guys who have been doing it for so long and picking off
Yeah.
amazing lines and they're 60 years old or whatever. It's just like you're more badass than I'll ever be. It's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Well, like you say, it's like why that episode of the 50s as important as the ones where they're getting to the summit, like skiing the line, because that is the reality as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like of that endeavor, basically.
Yeah. And there's times when that's not to be misconstrued with there is times where you need to push forward and shit gets hard and not calling it quits is the right thing to do too. So it's definitely this game that we play all the time. But but yeah, backing off of things is never a bad call. You can always, well, you can't always go back, I guess, but you live to ride another day is always a nice way to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Hey man, well I'm going to ask you one more question because
Sure.
I'm very aware that you're on your honeymoon,
My
and you
wife's laughing.
yeah. Thanks, Marge. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Um, yeah. Final question. I mean, it's a bit it's a bit of a classic sort of snowboard podcast question,
Sure.
but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, and this is from a friend of mine actually. He
Sweet.
asked me to ask you this. What's the best feeling thing you've ever done on a snowboard?
Oh man. Well, oh, there's lots. And I think it's changed throughout my life. Um, like just being in Michigan for a few days the other day was so sick, riding tow ropes and stuff, like that vibe of like the skate park feeling. Like at one point in my life, that was everything. That was the coolest feeling I could get. Everybody, you see everything that's going on in the park. You're on the tow rope, you're doing a million laps. Like that feeling was really rad at one point. I think right now in my life, the way that I consider it, the raddest feeling, I love, like, a lot of people ask me what my favorite trick in the half pipe is, and it's without a doubt an air to fakie, for multiple reasons, but more so, I think the best feeling on a snowboard is finding that grab. And for me, a lot of time it's indie or like in the middle of a McTwist when you can really crank Japan. But really, when you're in the air and you're putting so much effort into whatever grab you're doing, you're like contorting your body in these weird ways that you could never do on land, or like you need that air and that freedom of like gravity and space to like tweak your board. But um just grabs, man. Plenty of airtime to do a grab where you get to like tweak your board and your body in a rad way that gets captured in a photo, and you're like, "Whoa, how did I get my body like that?" But that is to me, and maybe will always be my favorite thing on a snowboard. I mean, nothing ever beats a turn in some deep pow, like some fast frontside turn. I love that shit, but man, doing grabs and tweaking them like just with all your strength that you have. I mean, that's the best feeling to me on a snowboard. And I wish I could do it on my skateboard, and I wish I could turn like I turn on my snowboard on a surfboard, but I can't. But
Yeah,
I can grab my
I think that
snowboard.
I think that very, every time I go surfing, I'm
Well,
always like, if I get
and
like
Kolohe.
one turn, just one,
Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you. And Kolohe, in this more recent video they put out, I don't recall what it's called, but it's sick. They got stuck in, or they went during the pandemic to the Maldives, I think.
Ah, okay,
Um,
I've not seen that. I'll have a
I,
look.
I think it's the Maldives. But anywho, they go to like Tahiti or somewhere where they got kind of like on this boat and they're just like there, or maybe it was Fiji. I don't recall, but he at some point in the movie is just like, man, airs are cool, but like airs suck, man. They beat your body up and da da da. I just want to go out and surf and do snowboard turns. Like, and I was just like, fuck, that's so sick. Like,
Yeah, well, John did that Insta post where he just put the caption "snowboarding." I don't know if you saw that.
I
I think
didn't,
it's like
but
backdoor, just like
yeah,
this
man.
ridiculous turn.
I mean, that is like maybe the best feeling too. Turns, man, where you aren't thinking about a bottom hitting some like weird bottom in your turn. Like it's just bottomless and you just can just lay all your effort into a turn. I mean, that's an amazing feeling too. But I think for me, the best feeling on my board is airtime and just tweaking tail grabs, indie grabs, whatever it is. That is, I feel badass when I get to do that.
There you go,
Yeah, man.
Danny. Thanks so much, man. That was a real pleasure. And
Yeah. Thank you
yeah,
for the time. I appreciate the interest.